Well, good morning, Stampers. My name is Juanette, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator here in the United States. So, for today's card tutorial, I made a water scene card. I ended up using 5 different Stampin' Up! Sets to achieve this look. And the inspiration came from this picture that I got off of the internet, and I think my card represents it fairly well. It was a really fun card to make. Now, this right here is the prototype, and although it's still a fairly nice card, I didn't like how high the water was. It looks like there was a tsunami coming into the dock there. And so in the card I'm going to show you now, I brought that water down a little bit more in that baggie. So what you're going to start out with is just a regular Ziploc bag, and all of the supplies that you're going to need for this project are down in the description box. So what you're going to do is take your baggie, and it is 6.5 inches wide, and there in the video I'm marking it at 2 3/4. However, that I felt was, like I said, a little bit too high up, and so in the one we're going to be making today, I actually marked it at 2 inches. And you mark it so that you will know in your seal-a-meal or your food saver how to line it up so that your water level is even. So you're going to just take plain old glycerin that you can buy at any supermarket or drugstore. And I believe I added about, maybe an ounce or two in the bag. You want it to be full enough so that you're able to see it, but not so full that it's very bulky. Then I took a few drops of one of our Stampin' Up! Reinkers and added it to the bag just to give that glycerin a little bit of color. Now I have what is called a food saver, but I know there are other um, sealing meal devices out there. I think one is called Seal a Meal. Anyway, that's what you're going to use to seal up your little baggie. So what you're going to do is squeeze out the majority of the air, although you do want a tiny bit of air in there because it gives those bubbles in the sea. Line up where you marked your baggie, lay it in your food saver, close the lid, you lock it, and then what you're going to do is just seal it. You're not going to vacuum and seal, you're just going to press the seal button there. And then when you pull out your little baggie, hopefully it's sealed well and will not leak. Sorry. I made another card that the baggie did not seal very well. I didn't use a seal-in meal. Instead, I used some other product that didn't work quite well. It leaked everywhere and totally ruined the card. So what you're going to do is just take your paper snips and trim off that excess of the bag, making sure not to cut into the sealed part because otherwise you're going to have your glycerin leak all over your table there. I took the Timeless Tropical stamp set And these are the palm trees. Now I'm going to show you some masking technique. Many of you know it, but some of you may be new to stamping and don't know it. You can use either that Post-it note labeling tape or just plain old Post-it notes. And what you're going to do is lay that over your stamp set that you don't want to have ink on. And in this case, it is the palm fronds, because all I want to do is stamp the bottom trunks first. And so I took Early Espresso ink pad, stamped it. Make sure you remove that masking tape, otherwise your ink will transfer over. And this is where a Stamparatus really comes in very nice, because you're able to keep your stamp right at the same place, so that when you stamp over the palm fronds, they match up perfectly. So add your removable labeling tape, or like I said, your Post-it note over the bottom of the trunks, and then stamp the top with Mossy Meadow ink or what other color green ink you would like. Remove the masking tape. Flip the lid over, and there you have a perfectly stamped set of palm trees. Now, because the picture has a little bit of yellow in those palm trees, I took our Stampin' Blends, the Daffodil Delight, and added just a little bit of yellow shading in between those palm fronds there. Then I took the dock, the boat, and these are from the By the Dock stamp and die set. It also has some oars with it, and I think that's it. But anyway, I also stamped them. And then I wanted to add a little bit of shading. So first I colored in my bird there. Now, I don't know if that's a seagull or what, but I used Daffodil Delight to color him in. And then I took soft suede and added a little bit of detail to that dock. Starting with the light shade there and coloring in the post, then coming down and adding a little bit of shading all along the edge. I wanted to give this dock a little bit of dimension. Now, I am not the best colorer, but I'm learning, and a good person to watch YouTube videos to learn more about this. Her name is Sandy Alnuck, and she is absolutely fantastic, whether it be coloring, watercoloring. I've learned a lot from her, but still need to learn a little bit more. What I have learned is that wherever there is going to be shading or your light source, right there in between those seats is where I need it to be darker, so that the seats look like they're elevated a little bit. Now, I did end up going in and add also some light and dark Night of Navy to the boat, after I finished coloring it in soft suede. And I did that off camera, but I didn't like the boat just being that soft suede color. I wanted a little bit more coloring brought into the picture. But I did want to leave a lot of that white in the background of the boat so it didn't just kind of fade into the background of the sand. Adding a little bit of dark soft suede, finishing up with the dock. Now to make the background scene, I took balmy blue ink pad and a blending brush and just added some color up to the top, which will be our sky. Then I took blueberry bushel and added a little bit darker areas to the edge of the panel there. Again, I have that picture that I had taken off the internet, and I'm referring to that off to the side so that I try to get the coloring to match. I like how it's a little bit splotchy there because that's sometimes how the sky looks. Then for the bottom, I took Bermuda Bay ink and add a little bit of coloring, again using a blending brush to the bottom of it. Now what I'm doing at the beginning of this tutorial is just showing you how to bring in all those elements for your card, and then in a little bit I'll show you all of the dimensions for the card. Now I took some of our Whisper White ink and stamped some clouds up there in the sky. Now when you do use this ink, number one, it takes a little bit of time to dry, so be careful that it doesn't smear. And it also fades back a little bit, so even though it looks fairly dark there, in the final card it is a little bit lighter. And I love that cloud stamp. I think it's one of my favorite cloud stamps, and that is from my metal stamp set. Now to make the sand, I took a piece of Sahara Sand cardstock. Oh, it's about 7.5 inches by 2 inches. And I added some Crumb Cake ink, again with a blending brush, and then took the waterfront stamp set that has that nice stamp that looks like sand or pebbles, and I added some Crumb Cake ink in varying places on that strip. Now it really doesn't matter the height of that because I'm going to tear it so that the sand looks a little uneven. Then from the Sea of Textures stamp set, I took this die that has all these little fish, And I usually don't show you any die cutting. However, to line this up perfectly, I wanted to show you. So do you see how all those little fish are still in the die? That's what you want to do so that when you go to place them on your card, they line up beautifully just like the die there. So I had to take one of the little fish that had fallen out and put him back into the die using that jewel picker there. Now I've got the, oops, skip. So the inside of my card is from our celebration catalog. That's Happy Birthday. And I stamped it in, I believe that was Blueberry Bushel. That's going to go on the inside of our card. I know I've said this before, but I make cards for my coworkers. I'm a labor and delivery nurse, so this card will be for one of our March birthdays. Now I wanted some clouds, so this is a retired set, but it's called Lift Me Up. So any clouds that you have in your stash, you can use those. I die cut those out, and then I also die cut out that netting, and I believe I used Old Olive for that. The clouds are in Whisper White. And then for the birds for the card, I used the stamp set My Meadow. Then to give a little bit of dimension to those clouds, I took a little finger dauber with the Balmy Blue ink and just added a little bit of shading all around each one of those clouds. When I do put them on the card, I used Stampin' Dimensionals, some mini ones and a couple of big ones for that big cloud there. Then to distress the netting, I took Early Espresso ink. Again, used one of those little finger daubers and added some to that netting so that it kind of looks dirty, not quite all one dimension. Okay, here are all the supplies you're going to need. Now for one of the cards, I used the Crumb Cake twine there, and then the other one I used Night of Navy. And I believe it's intertwined with Sahara Sand. There's all my little bits and pieces for the card. I'm going to just lay those over to the side. Now there's my Ziploc baggie. And again, on this card, I sealed it at 2 inches with just a couple of drops of the Seaside Spray Reinker in it. And I played with it a little bit just to make sure it wasn't going to leak out. Now there is my sand, and that's 7.5 inches by about 2 inches, and then I tear it to about 1.5 inches all the way across. This is 6.5 by 4 3/4 Whisper White, and then I colored with my blending brush to make the sky and the sea. Then this is for the inside of the card, 6 3/4 by 4 3/4, stamped with happy birthday. Then you will need 2 pieces of 6 7/8 by 4 7/8. Now on one of the cards I did use Pineapple Punch, but the card we're making today I used Daffodil Delight. And this is just one of our layering pieces to go behind our scene and also behind the sentiment. Now, this is your card base. It is 10 by 7, not 10 by 5, and I scored it at 5. So it will give you a 5 by 7 card, but again, our measurements are 10 inches by 7, and then you score it at 5, fold it, and burnish it. You can start by layering your first layer onto your card base. I use 3-in-1 glue, and I like that glue. You've heard me say it before. It is because it is a solvent glue as opposed to a water-based glue, and so it does not warp your cardstock, and it also makes your cardstock or your card really firm. You know how some cards you get and they're really flimsy? This helps prevent that. You can get that glue at any of your craft stores. Now what I'm doing is lining up my water, taking my dye with my fish, adding just little drops of glue on the back of each of those fish. I have lined up my quote water there so that when I do lay down my fish, they are in the water, not up in the sky. So I can kind of see where that is. Lifting up that dye, turning it over, and placing it underneath the water. So see how I lift that up, then lay it down. Then I take my little picky tool here, pushing down on each one of those fish so that they will adhere to that card panel there. And then I just lift up over on that right hand side, making sure that each of those fish are out of the die and down on the card. He was trying to swim away. I had to put him back in place. I love how that looks. That is really a fantastic die. I love it. So I added 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape to all 4 sides of my water bag there, and I am removing the backing. Now I'm being extremely careful to make sure that I don't poke a hole into the bag and totally ruin the project or the card. So it took a little bit of fiddling to get all that off. But I have left some at the bottom there. I didn't remove the backing off of that because I want to be able to lay down the bag, making sure that it is across the entire card. I do bring it up about 1/4 inch from the bottom and then pull the bag taut, laying it over our background there. And it does hang over just a little bit, but that's okay. What I do is just turn it fold it over and attach it. Then I remove the backing off that bottom there. And then lay that down on the card, making sure that it is adhered on all four sides. You can see I've already stamped my birds up there toward the top. Isn't that cool how those little fish look like they're swimming in that water? Oh my gosh, this was such a fun card to make. So I use Stampin' Dimensionals to adhere the clouds up to the top there. I put one, the larger one over there on the right hand side, a small one over on the left hand side, and then another small one on that right hand side. Now to adhere the dock, I took double-sided tape and put it on the back where it will be placed over the water. And then I took dimensionals and added them underneath the bird and the tops of those posts. So you see I've got double-sided tape there toward the bottom of the dock. Ended up having to cut one of the mini dimensionals in half so that it would fit on those two top areas. And that is so that the water has some dimension, so it will be flat at the bottom over the water, but raised up a little bit up in the sky, the bird and the tops there. Now, as I finish decorating this card, I'm just going to have a little bit of music playing in the background because you can watch and see what I'm doing here without me having to explain it. And if you do need some explanation, just put a comment in the comment section and ask me what I'm doing at certain parts. So now I'm just finishing off with a little bit of greenery down there underneath the palm trees. And because it is a very bulky card, I did make a 5x7 box for it to go into. And I would like to give a shout out to Barbara from the UK. This lovely woman wrote me the nicest email complimenting me on my Power of Hope stand-up card. I actually printed it out and I'm going to frame it and put it in my craft room because it was just such a lovely email. So there's my final card, but then I realized as I'm showing it to you, I hadn't glued the inside panel in. So I had already glued the happy birthday to the back of that Daffodil Delight, adding some liquid glue, and then putting the inside panel in there. It will be difficult for me to give that card away because it was so much fun to make. The one on the left is the one that we completed just now, and the one on the right is the tsunami card. It's still a nice card, but you can see the sand is a different color. Let's see, what else did I do different? Oh, the rope. It's Crumb Cake on the right-hand side, and it is that, I believe it's Sahara Sand and Night of Navy on the left-hand side. Thank you for joining me, and if you would like any of these products, please visit my online 24/7 store at JuanetteHewitt.stampingup.net. I would love to have you as a customer. And if there's anything that I can do to help you out to achieve making a card like that, please let me know. I would be more than happy to answer any questions or to help you out in any way. My favorite is the left-hand one. You tell me, which is your favorite? Please subscribe and hit the notification button, and see you guys soon. Bye-bye.